So you were drafted 3 times, Charlie, in the 28th round in 2004, the 20th round in 2005, and then the second round by Colorado in 2008. What was each of these experiences like, and how are they similar and different?
Different, very different. My first year in 2004 was my senior year of high school, and at that time, the draft and follow was a big thing. It is no more, but in essence, a team could draft a player and basically wait until right before the draft the next year and sign the player. So it was kind of like maybe not insurance, but it just gave you the rights to a player in case he really developed over the next 360 days or whatever. It gave you the rights to sign him. So if a guy you think maybe is projectable and has some upside, but he's not ready for pro ball right now, you could take a late round flyer on him and come back in 6, 7, 10 months and evaluate, like, do we want to try and sign this guy? And so that's what happened to me as a senior in high school, draft and follow. It was kind of surprising. I was not ready for the pro game at that time. I ended up going to junior college, was never offered a contract. And I was a left-handed pitcher also, like tall lefty, projectable, all that. Went to junior college as a pitcher, and then the next year, 2005, 20th round by the Red Sox, I think, was very much the same type of thing. Me going to junior college is different than going to a 4-year school, because as a junior college player, you're eligible to be drafted at any time after your freshman year or sophomore year, as opposed to a 4-year university. I think you have to either be 21 or wait until after your 3rd year of school. So I was in a unique situation where I was draft eligible after my freshman year, and again, I had a great year as a left-handed pitcher at Young Harris College and was drafted by the Red Sox after that season. And again, it wasn't a draft with an intent to sign immediately. It was a draft to follow through the summer. I was going up to the Cape Cod League to pitch. I wasn't, again, ready for pro baseball, in my opinion, where I thought I was maybe at the time, but looking back, I wasn't ready. So good decision, I guess, by the Red Sox to not sign me immediately and to give me another year and see if in one more year maybe I would be ready to sign. And sure enough, in one more year I was not ready to sign, so I went to Georgia Tech.
But it's binding for that year up until where you're kind of on call basically by the teams where they make the decision if they want.
So being drafted as a draft and follow, you only have the ability to sign with that one team, right? So that team gives themselves and only themselves the rights to sign you up until next year's draft, basically. So I couldn't then go sign a free agent contract, or say I all of a sudden start throwing really, really hard in the summer league and striking everybody out, whatever. Like, another team can't sneak in and sign that player.
That makes sense. And so mindset-wise, 2004, 2005 versus 2008, going into the drafts, how was that different? Because I'm sure in 2008 you knew.
Yeah, well, it was totally different, right? So, fast forward a couple of years, going into the 2008 season, my college career has kind of taken a few turns. I went from junior college pitcher, transferred to Georgia Tech, tried to pitch my first year, wasn't very good, was hurt, medical red shirt, and then went out and played summer ball after my 3rd year of college and changed positions, basically just started hitting that summer, came back to Georgia Tech and had 1 year of hitting before the 2008 draft. So, kind of a whirlwind year. And honestly, at that point, I was just happy to be back on the field, right? As I got to Georgia Tech, my first year didn't play. I just wanted to play the game. Happy to get back out there. Not thinking about the draft, just wanted to continue to be able to play baseball. Had a good year with Georgia Tech. Played against some really good competition in the ACC, right? That's So there were some good players, some first round picks out of that conference that year, and there was some talk of me possibly getting drafted. I certainly played well, but not really having a history of being a good player. I mean, it's just like, who's gonna take a flyer on this guy? Like, yeah, he had one good season. Like, what does that mean? Most of these other elite players who were drafted in the first round, these guys were 3-year all-conference type players who were consistently performing against one of the best of college conferences. So I didn't really expect much going into that draft. I had met with some teams. I was a little bit older, maybe a little more mature than I was as a young pitcher, junior college player. I was starting to realize there's like how good the game can be played, and that I was really far away from professional baseball, especially the big leagues. So I didn't read too much into it. I wasn't worried. I kind of had like a new lease on the game. Like, I was able to play the game again, and that was really what I wanted the most out of my experience. I wasn't playing with intent to be drafted necessarily. I was just enjoying the game of baseball.
Yeah. Well, and it was elbow tendonitis at your freshman year at Georgia Tech. Did that ever like cast some serious doubt in your mind about where can my career go, or was it more like, okay, you knew you'd be back?
No, I thought I was done. Wasn't traveling with the team, like staying at home on the weekends while the team went off and played. So I'm in the batting cage by myself, throwing bullpens to a net. Like basically just wanting to play the game again. Baseball was basically gone. I wasn't playing. I didn't see myself magically, adding a whole bunch of velocity to my fastball. I just kind of felt like pitching has met its end. Like I was not going to continue to be able to play the game as a pitcher, and that's when I decided I need to pull out all the stops. I'm gonna try and pitch. I'm gonna try and play defense. I'm gonna try and hit, and I did all those things in the Texas Collegiate League that summer after my first year at Georgia Tech. And so I just wanted to play. Like I just went out to play. I told them I could do everything, just hoping to play. Which really wasn't true at that time. I hadn't played a position since high school, and I still kind of hard-headed. Even that summer I was playing pretty well, swinging the bat for the first time. I still really didn't want to let go of pitching. I thought maybe I had a future in pitching, and I was pretty hard-headed that summer, but ultimately, turns out I'm not a great pitcher.
Well, and I was going to ask, Jack Caglione, was there a point in your draft meetings where you projected, or by the time in 2008, the pitching was out of the picture, but was the injury really when you decided like pitching's off the table for you?
No, it took me a while to like get that through my head that I'm like not a good pitcher, and that I could hit a little bit, and I could run a little bit. Like it just took me a while to put that package together and believe that maybe there's a chance for me to continue to play baseball, which was exciting, right? Like, hey, I don't have to stop being done playing baseball.
Yeah.
Maybe I get to play, beyond this 1 year or this summer. And it became pretty apparent that it was going to be as a hitter there in 2008. Like once I started playing, I just realized like I'm competitive in the ACC as a hitter. And playing outfield, and I was never competitive as a pitcher, and so like that kind of quickly turned around for me.
Yeah,
that position change set in pretty quick in 2008.
Yeah, well, and it worked out. Rewinding back to when you're just trying to get eyeballs on who you are as a player, the NFL has pro days for exposure. How big of a part did your workouts play in getting scouts' eyes on you, and also today, I mean, social media and technology can take a player and popularize their name tenfold. How has that kind of changed from when you were a player?
So it's been a lot, like things have changed a lot since I was drafted. My draft experience, I think was largely a result of me playing in Atlanta, a major hub for airports, and I think just like my visibility being in the city of Atlanta really helped me. We had another player who was supposed to be a pretty high pick that people were coming in to see, so I think I had a lot of like secondhand exposure. Like guys coming to see them, and instead they saw me do something. And then playing in the ACC, like I said, there were a lot of first-round picks that would come through Atlanta, and if you wanted to watch the closer from Miami pitch, you could fly into Atlanta when the Hurricanes were playing Georgia Tech and pick them up on the weekend, and then you'd be out or whatever, like no big deal. So I think that really helped me. There wasn't so much of a showcase culture in my time. Now, we did have a pro day. That was like the closest thing, right? So now there's all these showcases. There's a combine. I mean, there's all these things, which you could argue are good or bad for players. The one thing that I think really helped me was we did have a pro day where scouts got to come and talk to players, and I think it probably helped me a little bit to talk to some scouts. I'm not. I think it didn't hurt me to be able to talk to scouts, but I think that what helped me the most is pro day. We ran for times, and I ran a really good time, and so that's one of those things. Like, speed is pretty objective. Like, I can measure your speed. It's kind of hard to quantify the hit tool, and even power sometimes can be debatable, and there's a lot of subjective baseball skills that are hard to quantify. But speed is one thing that I can say, like, this is how fast he is on the stopwatch, and I think if you do that, it's easy for scouts to say, hey, look, this guy has to be in the conversation because of his speed. It's an easy fallback. Like, here's a tool that I can prove to you, even though he only has 1 year of experience hitting in the ACC, I can tell you for sure that he's above average runner. And so I think that really helped me.
Yeah, and I mean, it's with baseball drafts, it's like throwing a dart. I mean, even the first round percentage is so low of the hit rate. It's so different from the other major sports where you can get drafted and then choose not to go, and then you can get drafted again, like what happened with you. What is the something that you most appreciated from the 2004 and 2005 draft processes that helped you prepare for the 2008 selection?
I think the maturity of feeling like I was a good pitcher and thinking that I was, and thinking like, hey, I'm great in junior college, and then wondering why the teams didn't want to sign me or try to sign me. I think I felt like there was a big disconnect, when in reality, I was playing against, there was some good junior college baseball back then, but it wasn't the ACC, it wasn't minor leagues, it wasn't the best players, it wasn't the best amateur players. I don't think I understood how good the game could be played, and how there's always someone better and there's always another level. I think I was immature at the time, and it took a lot for me to learn. I needed to have some failure. I needed to learn how to deal with some failure. I needed to bounce back, make my adjustments. I needed to see some better competition, and like I saw in the ACC, and realizing the game can be played at a very high level, and then also realizing that like I wasn't there yet, and that I'm not going to be there at the time. Like, I wasn't there then. I still had a lot of room for improvement. I think just that growth attitude was something I didn't have when I was coming out of high school at age 17.
Okay.
And I think, by the time I was drafted after my 4th year of school in 2008, I was on my way to realizing I needed to grow and get better, and that I wasn't a finished product, and being a good player in your cross section of, okay, this one particular year of draft eligible players, like whatever, I was like pretty competitive, but there were 70 something other guys who were like considered better than me, right? So like I still had a long way to go, and that's even just like 1 year. Like, I mean, you look around now, there's guys that have been playing at the highest level for a decade, right? So it's like, to compare yourself to 1 year's worth of players is really just a drop in the bucket when you're looking at like the best league in the world, and how guys can transcend 1 year and make it into a whole career. So it's just I think a bit of a maturity thing, which is hard. Like if you're a team trying to decide who do I sign, who do I draft with my first pick, second pick, it's so developmental. It's really hard to get things right. Like I don't know who's going to be the best player in the future, because amateur skills don't immediately translate like they might in football or basketball, right? You've got to evaluate baseball skills now and what they could be in the future, and who that person is, and can they develop into that future that I think they can be. And that subjective part is so hard to quantify. That's why you just never really know.
Yeah, well, and it's humbling. Like, you really discover who you are as a player beyond who you thought you were. And so for the young guys that are about to be drafted this year, or who maybe they aren't drafted this year, what's the biggest thing that you wish you knew going into the process? And it sounds like you discovered yourself as a player. And also, what advice would you give to the players who might be overlooked in this year's draft but still have the potential to succeed?
Well, I think that's a very good question. I think to the player who feels like they might have been overlooked, if you continue to play well and improve, I think it's hard or unlikely for a player that has upper level professional ability to not be found, right? If you are good enough to succeed in the big leagues, I think you'll somehow end up eventually being found, right? It might be independent league, it might be junior college, it might not be how you think it's going to be. It's not going to be like full scholarship to the big Division I that you've always wanted to go to, immediately upon high school graduation. Like, that doesn't work for everyone. But I do think eventually you will get there, right? Like Altuve, right? Like, from Venezuela, I think, and like super short. Like, there was a lot of things going against him. Hard to get into the program. He was too short. Like, whatever. But eventually he made it because he is that player, and look where he is now, right? And you could, you could point to, Americans, domestic players. Like my particular story. Didn't even hit for a few years. Like, eventually, if you play well enough, I think you'll get there. Someone will find you. And then to the player who maybe is that premier talent, top in your class, I think it's very important to realize that, again, you might be really good compared to all the other 18-year-olds, but it's unlikely that you're going to be really good compared to, major league average. Yeah. Right? Like, I still think you have a long way to go. There's a lot of development that needs to happen. You might have the tools. You might be compared to some big league players, but ultimately, I don't think you're going to be a finished product until you fail, learn how to deal with failure, overcome failure, make your adjustments, and then learn how to succeed, and then learn how to motivate yourself. So I don't think, I think there's 4 levels of minor league baseball for a reason, right? Like, you're not seeing guys get drafted and then go to the big leagues very frequently. You're not seeing guys get drafted and go to AAA frequently. It is a developmental sport, and more than any of your physical skills, I think the way you think about the game, the way you think during the game, your mental thought processes, those are the things that need to be developed more than your speed and your swing. I think those are the things that require refining at the minor league level before you're ready to play at the big leagues.
Awesome. Well, thank you. That's all I had. So I really appreciate you doing this, Charlie.